Good evening. I just want to address a couple of things, district-wide before I jump into my report. Obviously, this past week, the Board of Education has received a couple of notifications and feedback from our community regarding a book selection and access to a certain title within our school district. I think I want to start at a higher level. There's two I guess, paths for the Board of Education. When you talk about curriculum and resources to support curriculum, those are things and decisions that are brought to you and recommendations for approval. When you saw, and if there's an issue or a concern regarding that, a parent has, and it falls under board policy, the uniform complaint procedure. And there's a process that we would undergo to look at that. The process is different for libraries, as it kind of falls under a different statute, different area, if you will. And there is also a process that we would go through if there was a concern with a book that is found in our library. And that's more of an administrative procedure. It's been in place for a long time here in Barrington 220. It's called Procedure for Reevaluation of Materials. That starts at the Library Media Center review, moves to the school level review, then goes through the district level review. So I won't go through that and read that to the board, but I wanted you to know there's kind of two different buckets we're talking about with this. Most recently, specific to the title that has brought up some concern, there was a communication with a group of parents in our middle school that recommended and encouraged that our students read over the summer, thank the parents for the year, and link to our middle school reading list, and also attached a document with a couple of award-winning lists, one being the Lincoln Award list. On that list was a book that has drawn a lot of attention. The teacher did point out that parents should look. There's additional adult content, and they should, take that in consideration. To be clear, if you go online, our middle school website, this book is not on our middle school reading list. It is also not a book or a title that's in our middle school. It's just an unfortunate situation that occurred, and obviously we've done our best to rectify that with communication to the parents that received that. The second point of that is this is the kind of the age appropriateness of the book and where it does fall. The book currently is in Barrington High School Library. After some of the communication that we have received, specific from parents regarding concern over the book, we have initiated the school level review process. So that team and that process has started, and it will continue going through, and a recommendation eventually would come to the Board of Education in which we would have those conversations. I think, again, it's important to realize that students generally have First Amendment rights when it comes to access to information, which includes reading books in the school library. You cannot remove books from the library if the reason for removal is to deny access to the ideas that a board disagrees with, and I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just cautioning you as we move through this process. It is important in all the cases that I've reviewed that a board sticks to its policy and its procedure regarding these issues, and I would say that this has started, and we will go through that in the next couple of weeks with a recommendation for it coming to the board. So I wanted to address that with the Board of Education out of the gate and answer any questions that the board may have prior to me moving into the rest of my report.
I'm wondering, so I've seen just some images from the book and snippets, but I don't have a lot of context for this. And so is there a way to, if board members, as you're reviewing the process, to have access so we could read the full text or the draw, just to get an idea of what the community has been talking about?
Yeah, I would say that the copies that we have had first probably should go to the committee members that are going to serve and look at this, and as they come available, we can certainly make those available to the board. And to a good point, looking at something in totality, the message and the content, I think is important when you consider any type of censorship.
I actually, okay. I think we should stop saying censorship or banning. I don't think that is the issue here. I think it's making sure that we are providing our children with appropriate content at the appropriate age and with the supervision of parents. So I think the narrative's being changed to banning, and that's It's not what's being proposed here. It's making sure we're keeping our children safe.
Right, and I think the issue that I'm finding, though, is there's not really a generally available grading chart, if you will, for these books, right? So in other words, there's not a system where we can look at books and say, these are rated G, therefore they exclude certain types of content, versus this other book that might include a certain type of content, and therefore it's rated, I don't know, I'm using movie theater, criteria here, but PG-13, for example. That's not readily available, and that's probably not something, or is it something that we could potentially consider down the line after this review is completed?
Yeah, I don't know that we would take the initiative to try to grade or rate books. That would be, kind of a task that would be ongoing, and I don't know how you would ever do something like that. I think when you look at age appropriateness, that's certainly something to look at and consider in this for sure. But we also want to, be cognizant of the age of our students and the importance of allowing them to access things that they have an interest in, that challenge them. We have courses that are taught at the college level in our high school, and having access to those things. I would say, this is a window out into different perspectives in the world, and there's a lot of books that have adult content that our secondary or high school students certainly have the to process, reflect upon, and maybe broadens their perspective. I would not say I'm weighing in on this particular book because there's a process that we need to go to,
Sure.
and it's really important for this board to understand the implications of trying to usurp that process. And I'm not suggesting anyone has, but it's in place for a reason, and we need to go through that as the next step.
Is it possible, or does it warrant further analysis to say, will we be able to put in a system where parents then have the ability to select what their children have access to?
I would say we should go through this process first, and if that's the conversation the board wants to have, I want to really think through what are potential implications of that for our students in our school district. And I'm not in a position to respond to those tonight.
And then to be clear, throughout this review process, these books are going to remain on the shelf.
Well, there's 6 copies, and they're all currently in the hands of adults that are looking at it and will be used by the committee. So I would say they're probably going to be in their hands right now.
Okay.
Can you maybe clarify a little bit more the review process? So what exactly are they looking for? What things would cause a book to be pulled?
Yeah.
And by pulled, I mean, pulled's probably, again, the wrong word. That's not what I want to use. Reviewed. What
I will include this in your weekly report so you have all of this, that we, I can go to the criteria of selection, support the district's general education goals, enrich and support both the curriculum and personal needs of our students and faculty, taking into consideration diverse interests, abilities, socioeconomic backgrounds, maturity levels, cultures, and extracurricular interests. Encourage appreciation for both informational and recreational reading, viewing, and listening. Include all print, non-print, electronic materials. So there's a long list here. I don't think I'm going to read them all to you, but I will share those with you as well.
So I think I've looked at this, some of the emails and questions that we've received recently is that there are different categories as far as what concerns are amongst the community. So I think, number one is the question of curriculum. I think number 2 is the question of what materials are presented in classroom by either teachers or outside speakers that maybe aren't part of the curriculum, but it's a guest speaker. It's a mom who shows up at Countryside and reads to the 4th grade class. There are things that come, are presented to children that aren't necessarily part of the curriculum. And then I think the last issue is, kind of the summer reading list. So I would say, and then, I think the library issue is kind of a separate issue.
Right.
But if we could kind of talk about those three things, I think that, number one, and I do think it's important for our community to understand that, Dr. Hunt has come on, he has reviewed the process that the board has used to look at curriculum. One of the maybe 7 or 8 jobs of a Board of Education is to approve the curriculum. And we have always done it after the fact, which is wrong. It's wrong.
Right.
And so Dr. Hunt has brought this up, has said, we're not doing this anymore. So going forward, he's changing that so that any changes in the curriculum are highlighted. They are brought to the board. They are shown to the community. It is an open process, and there is complete transparency. So I think in that regard, I'm incredibly happy with what you've done. With regard, if I can just skip right to the summer reading list, again, not a lot of consistency, maybe no consistency, as far as what teachers provide to their students. And that needs to be brought in under the district level as well, which Dr. Hunt is taking the initiative to. So I do have a quick question with regard to those 2 teachers or whoever that sent out those materials, because I also think it was inappropriate. It is inappropriate for 11 and 12-year-olds to be recommended to read a publication that has, images that are beyond their level. So with regard to that teacher, what was the teacher's responses to this, or how was this communicated to the teachers? Because, I think that's really important in this discussion too.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to speak for the teacher. The principal spoke directly to the individual involved. Certainly, there was no intent to create or put parents in this type of situation. There was overt attempt to draw the attention that some of this content is more mature. And I think, and again, I don't want to speak for, but my reading of that is a passion to try to help and encourage reading over the summer, right? Would we do this again? I think that's not going to happen.
No.
We have looked at every building and what the expectations are for summer reading, and to your point, some have 0 expectation and some have extensive lists of recommendation. That's a problem that we need to fix, and we will commit to fixing it.
Awesome. And then if I could just speak to that last issue that I kind of mentioned second, which is materials that are brought into the classroom, presented to students that aren't necessarily part of the curriculum. I think, from my perspective, I don't quite know how that works, and I don't know if there is a uniform policy as far as, reviewing when, parents, representatives from certain groups or whatever come in to, and even books that teachers are reading to students that aren't necessarily part of the curriculum. I don't know if there's a review, and I think, again, to have a transparent discussion about that, maybe at some future board meeting date, I'm not saying in July, but if we could really make sure to earmark this and discuss it later, I think that it would kind of help to bring down some of the anxiety and the feelings that, parents are feeling, which is if I don't police it, no one is. And who wants to use the word police when you're talking about schools? I mean, it should be that, there is oversight, there's direction, there's governance, and that, this comes from a district level. It's not just classroom dependent. So I would encourage us to have this future discussion about this and really dig into it.
Yeah, and we can do that. Some of the examples you gave are really going to come down to the teacher and the building principal. If you're coming in to present on career day and the materials you bring on patent law, I can't think any controversial about patent law.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
If there was something controversial, we'd hope our teachers would interject, intervene, and address it. Larger presentations to, let's say, a full class, a guest speaker coming in, principals go through a process to vet and look at those things. But happy to address those things when we get past, the most immediate concerns.
Dr. Hunt, could the review committee potentially come back with, a variety of options and not just, oh, we're going to make this book available or not make it available? Could they potentially say, oh, we'll make it available, but we suggest some kind of label or explicit warning label in terms of graphic content? just as a hypothetical, are there kind of, or is it just we're going to make it available or not make it available? Like how
I would
is-
think it's going to be a pretty point blank conversation in terms of a response to availability or not. Because I think if you take this conversation, then what does that mean for all books
For all the
related to?
books, are we going to label some of them or not? Okay.
Exactly.
So really the choice, the recommendation will come back, either make it available in the high school library or don't make it available.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I will say that, Dr. Hunt, you mentioned that we should be following our school policies, and I agree. As a big policy advocate. But I will say that, now this is in student publications, but there are prohibitions in student publications, both in high school and in elementary, of obscene content. And it's defined in our policy. And we just reviewed this policy 2 months ago. In fact, we reviewed this, we passed it. And obscene is described as lewd, impure, indecent, calculated to shock the moral sense of humans by a disregard of chastity or modesty, objectionable or offensive to accepted standards of decency. And this is in policy 7315. And this is prohibited content from distribution at both our high schools and our elementary schools. Now, it falls under the provision of student publications. It falls under the definition of student publications, but I would argue that, student publications, if they are going to be reviewed and for content to make sure that they fall within these boundaries, then I don't know what the difference is between student publications and publications that are made available. So I would challenge this because, again, we reviewed and passed this very policy on March 1st.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, I guess I wouldn't jump into cutting and pasting pieces of policy to
Agreed.
apply to
I
other
agree.
areas, right? I think libraries fall under a totally different realm with this, but there is a process specific to libraries and challenges, and I think we need to let that play itself out and see where we land, and we bring it back to the board for conversation.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your attention to this. I appreciate you responding to parent emails. And, I do think that when it comes to looking at content in libraries, there are, let's be clear, there are probably many books in our libraries that none of us, or at least I personally do not want read aloud to me, okay? For whatever reason. Maybe they use a derogatory slur. Maybe they talk about intimacy. It's difficult to, put all of this in one category, and we know it offends us personally, but I do appreciate that there's a process, and I do appreciate that, there are certain publications that are going to upset parents more than others, especially, in the situation, which again, Dr. Hunt is remedying, where they're kind of pushed forward to a younger audience. So, anyway, thank you.
My child's 6th grade English teacher sends out a summer reading material, including gender queer. Okay? Hopefully everybody can see this, yeah? 11, 12 years old. Hopefully you like this, yeah? You guys over there, because you guys make the decisions over there. Okay, 11-year-old.
Disgusting.
All right? Now, from this book, brother talking to sister. So you never tasted yourself? Sister shows brother. Vagina slime. Then there's words blowjob, gay shit. This is exactly what I would expect a pedophile to behave when approaching a child, to normalize sexual behavior, to abuse them. And this is how I see you. Stop sexualizing our kids. Stop abusing them.
Margotata. After Margotata Sylvia Coleman. I'm not calling the names again. If you guys can't hear me, that's the way it is. Thank you, Margaret.
Hopefully 3 kids in the district this upcoming school year. Many are hesitating, including me, with enrollment of their kids, which does not look good on the district's part, especially knowing the reason behind parents not enrolling their kids. They do not feel safe. You lost their trust. You said you're not sure what I'm referring to. This was our email conversation with Mr. Hunt, explicit sexual education classes. If you adopt the SB 818, porn will be normalized by schools, and there's no place for that. If parents want to sexualize their kids, let them do it outside of school. This is definitely not the place for it. This is a public place that tenders to educate minors. Anything besides any age-appropriate anatomy is not considered educational anymore on the public school K through 12 level. Books found recently in the middle school and high school that went under the radar since 2019 showed explicit pornographic pictures and descriptions. Who's responsible for having those books there? We have Dr. Berry. You should know that exposure to sexually explicit material may lead a child to normalize and become desensitized to high-risk behaviors. Likelihood of a child becoming a victim of sexual violence, instigating sexual violence against another child, greater involvement in deviant sexual practices such as rape. Mr. Hunt, if our district adopts SB 818, everyone who's working with children and introduces anything that is not age-appropriate will be a sexual predator. Please start thinking rationally. Where is your morals and ethics? Aren't you all parents as well? This is not about gay, straight anymore. It's about our kids being kids and taking care of them, allowing them to have a normal, safe childhood, and growing up to be mentally and psychologically responsible adults. Also, I suggest you do a little bit more research on nudity and porn exposure to minors. Those who are okay with it seem to have a problem with themselves and their addictions. This is not normal. Your answer should be a firm no to SB 818, not even a grain of doubt. Thank you.
Okay, I've asked you guys not to delay the meeting. I asked you not to do that. You're delaying the meeting by clapping. You can stand up and show your support. Sylvia Tolman, then Marsha McCleary is after that.
Good evening. I'm Sylvia Tolman. I have a 14 and 16-year-old here in the district. And I recently became aware of books available in the high school to my kids, which you've discussed. They're titled "This Book is Gay" and "Gender Queer." My opposition to these books has nothing to do with their LGBTQ content, but of their pornographic nature. They discuss in detail how 2 men can pleasure each other, how to give a proper hand job, and a comic book cartoon demonstrating masturbation and oral sex between men. These books have mature content that is considered R-rated, and I consider it X-rated. And I would be just as upset if these books with these pornographic images had heterosexual content as well. Perhaps that's in our school library, I don't know. So children's brains have not developed enough psychologically or emotionally to fully interpret this mature only for adult content. Research has shown that exposure to pornography can impair a child's developing brain, social interactions, emotional skills, as well as impulse control issues up until their mid-20s. Our school libraries are not public libraries. Schools are supposed to be safe environments for our kids. This pornographic content has no place in our schools. Our younger than 17 age kids can't go see an R-rated movie on their own, nor should they be allowed to check out these books without parental consent. Why are these books even in our school libraries? Because they're award-winning? Well, they're not age appropriate, and that's what we need in our schools. And who's responsible for putting these books into our schools so our kids have access to them? Speaking at the high school level, I would like to see a system in place where parental consent is required to check out books that would be considered R-rated. And this needs to be a simple process for a parent to do. We moved to Barrington in 2008 because of its conservative family values and D220's reputation of academic excellence. I send my It's an extension of the home environment in which they're raised. No parent would willingly send their children to school knowing that it's not a safe place for them physically, socially, or emotionally. Yet my kids have access to pornography in school. The sexualization of our children needs to stop. We need to preserve their childhood innocence. Please do better than this, D220, please, because I'm losing trust in you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Marcia, and thank you for standing. After Marcia will be Jerry Ewald.
I am Marcia McClary. I have 5 children, 4 of which attend D220 schools, longtime resident and previous BHS graduate. So I am not aware of any federal or state laws requiring D220 to share what I would call adult content with our students, so this is a completely local decision, which is different than a lot of things we've talked to you guys about the last 2 years. In these cases, pornography shown to students needs to be remedied immediately, in my opinion, and I think the community has shown up and showed you that clearly. And what I did this weekend, I listened to the book, This Book is Gay, and again, same thing, I don't care if it's heterosexual or gay or whatever. The content in that book, 2 full chapters, are explicit content, and it should be pulled immediately. Our children have access to this stuff on ebooks. It's completely inappropriate. I'm passing out a packet of information, including the list of the 3 books at issue, a copy of the page of this book with explicit content, posts showing that even Facebook, crazy, removed the censored content, it censored the book content of another book found at BHS. And we have a fact sheet about harmful effects of pornography, and my 2 emails asking for resolution to this issue, as well as incorporating age-appropriate content as a core belief in District 220 is something I think we should stand up for. I don't care if the other districts are doing this. I don't care towards the books and materials. We need to show age-appropriate content to our children and stand up for them and protect them from this stuff. And here are some of the harmful effects of this pornography. A 2014 study found increased pornography linked to decreased brain matter. Research shows child or teens' exposure to violent pornography can impair their brain's social interactions and emotional skills. We're doing so much to help with SEL, and then we're going to allow them to see these things freely. And I know most of you have religious beliefs that do not support this. They do not. And that is protecting our diversity initiatives too, is to allow the parents to decide what content these kids see. We choose every day not to have R-rated movies for our 14-year-old sometimes because it's not appropriate. I don't care how many awards they've won. It doesn't really matter. And it says by age 10, 32% of children have been exposed to pornography, and the average first exposure of internet pornography is 12, and a lot of that is coming now through the schools and the devices the kids are using through schools. I will pass this out to you so you can see it, but I really appreciate your immediate response to this, and I'm thrilled the community is showing up on this issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcia. Jerry? After Jerry will be Tom Eman.
Jerry Ewald, father of 4. I have 3 in the Barrington 220 school district. And look, great discussions here, and it's I can imagine it's got to be very hard for you guys to sit here and go through this, right? I find myself sitting in the seat, my stomach's getting very upset, right? It's hard to sit here and listen to what is being taught to our kids, right? So as a parent and a father, I'm not angry. I'm saddened, right? I'm saddened that we've gotten to this point, that we've allowed this type of stuff to come into the school instead of allowing the parents to teach their kids, right? So somehow we've got it in our mind that we've given you the right and the ability to teach our kids what should be taught at home. And so that's got to be hard for you to realize we got to this point, but you guys have a decision and an opportunity to reverse that, right? To bring that back and put it back in the hands of the parents. So I just spoke as a father. So now I'm going to speak as a pastor, right? And Sandra, you started off by saying a quote from Dalai Lama that talked about love and kindness, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's extremely important, all this stuff. So when I quote from the Bible, I do it in the same way. And I look at all of you, because you have the decision in your hands to stop this and reverse this, right? And what Jesus says is that for anyone that causes a child to stumble or sin, it would be better for that person to have a millstone tied around their neck and thrown into the ocean, right? This is how serious God, our Creator, is about what you guys are doing, right? And I'm not saying it's you guys because you're stuck. I shouldn't say that. You guys are in a difficult situation. You're being pushed stuff from the government and from the state, but you have the ability to stand up and say no, right? If our Creator is telling us that what is happening to our kids is one of the worst form of punishment that you can actually receive, then you have an opportunity to reverse that. And I implore you, right? You will stand before your Creator one day, and you will have to give an account for what you have done. And we need to make sure that we are protecting our kids. And that burden falls on you right now. Thank you.
And then Nick, yes,
Thank you. Tom Eman, parent of 6 in the district, high school, prairie, countryside. Not going to rehash what has all just been discussed. I think Sylvia, Marcia, and Jerry just summarized it really well. I think obviously the material being discussed, it's obscene. I mean, by definition, it's obscene. It shouldn't be there, irrespective of the context. That doesn't matter. It's sexually graphic. I think the point was being made that this is R-rated or even NC-17 rated content. And our kids couldn't even go into the movie theater to see this, yet it's available for them to take out and check out in the school. The only thing I guess I want to understand, though, is that I don't even know how it got to this point. So I think, as part of your understanding the process and evaluating what's going on, I think there really needs to be a root cause to understand how did it even get to this point? How did it get to violating the policies that Angela had mentioned, of obscene material? And really, I think when you get to the end and it's presented to you as part of the library's process, I still don't understand the distinction between the two. But you have a choice to ultimately agree or disagree with that. And I implore you to pull these books. This is awful. And then I'd also encourage you to either enforce or amend the procedures that are in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mick, and then Annette Hudson after Mick.
My name is Michael Gassel, but my friends call me Mick. I am a retired Barrington 220 teacher, but here tonight representing the Illinois Family Institute. IFI is a faith-based organization that is pro-life, pro-marriage, that is, marriage between one man and one woman. I'm also here as someone who cares deeply about the students in this district. A year ago, my life and that of my family was changed forever when my daughter, who was 9 months pregnant, was rushed to the hospital when she didn't feel her baby moving, only to be told that her daughter, my granddaughter, Levitt Rose, had died and gone to heaven. As we tried to comprehend God's plan and heal in the weeks that followed, I was told that if I went back to work in August, it would help me as my job required the greatest concentration, and I would not think so much about the ordeal that we had just faced. I was told that because I was one of the 2 driver's ed teachers at Barrington High School across the street. And as my family needed me, I also saw the need for God, to work for God and against a radical woke agenda in the state-run schools. And after 13 years, I submitted my resignation and retired as I could not go back to the indoctrination of students I was already beginning to see. I resigned to be with my family because I saw what was on the horizon with comprehensive sex ed and Illinois Senate Bill 818, where children as young as kindergartners would be subjected to the filth, the lies, and the mind-altering agenda of this state. You will not find anti-biblical agenda in schools like Classical Consortium Academy here in town or at their second campus at Winnetka Bible Church. Yes, even parents at the so-called prestigious New Trier District are fed up, like many of you are, with the indoctrination, the filth in state-run schools. Nor will you find it at any of the campuses of Pastor Randy Bland's Families of Faith Academy, who also hopes to start a school here as soon as the building is found. Parents everywhere are saying enough is enough, and their precious children deserve better. What you will not see on the reading list at CCA or Pastor Bland's school is what's been discussed so often tonight. A book like Genderqueer, a book that depicts sexually explicit images that Mom Kathy May in Texas said got her sick and disgusted, and it should disgust you too. If you were to show that book to a child on the street, you would be arrested for disseminating obscene material and accused of pedophilia. These books should not be in any library in this district. I gave many of you here the scores from both Station and Prairie Middle Schools, and you can see the terrible scores and the money being spent. The district is failing you in so many ways. Parents and grandparents, how can you trust a school board that allows such filth like genderqueer to be given to children? The school board that will not tell you if teachers will be gender affirming and asking for the right to opt out of comprehensive sex ed that they are offering is not enough. Just having it here shows that they are grooming and the indoctrination this district is perpetrating on your children, all in the names of acceptance and diversity. How sick.
Thank you, Mick.
My district and I'm passing my time to Nick.
I can't hear you.
Passing my time to Nick.
This is
Annette?
Annette.
Yeah, she's Annette.
Annette Hudson.
Please
Thank
fit.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. This is the school board that had student Alyssa Casey in tears in January over the ridiculous mask mandate. The board who tried to stop Alyssa from completing her speech, saying someone couldn't yield their time to her because they could not accept the truths that Alyssa spoke. As Alyssa cried over the mask mandate and what it was doing to her and how she was worried about kids in younger grades, I thought of Pastor Randy Bland's schools where we got to see the smiles on kids' faces all the time. What the governor and this board did was nothing short of abusive, and the mental anguish it caused is totally heartbreaking. But exiting public schools is not enough unless you have resources for your children. Ladies and gentlemen, and yes, there are only two genders, regardless of your religious background, whether you are a single-parent household or whatever your circumstances are. There are excellent alternatives to public schools. From the principal approach school, which I just toured in Virginia, to micro schools like the one starting in Virginia, or homeschool co-ops. And homeschooling is taking off like crazy, as witnessed by the number of people at the Illinois Homeschool Conference that I was just at Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois. Please see me or call me to find out which one of these is right for your family. Just as I stepped on the brake thousands of times to keep my students out of harm's way, I am here because I want to protect the young people from the indoctrination that's taking place. My kids, the kids in this district, my grandkids, all of them, young kids are so impressionable, and I also want parents to know about the resources that are available to have them exit state-run schools. Parents, how would you feel if your 11-year-old child had the keys to a car and was going to drive to McDonald's or Twisted Burger here in town and a teacher knew and never told you? The results would be catastrophic, wouldn't they? And I'm sure you'd want to know and stop it. Similarly, how disgusting is it that this board may allow a child to tell a teacher they want to change their gender and you as your parent are not told? You know, if God forbid a school building was ever on fire, I would know all of you would do everything you could to save your children. As Illinois Family Institute's field director, the Reverend Caesar LaFleur, always says, ladies and gentlemen, the school building's on fire. Save your precious children. They are yours, not your district's. They are robbing children of their innocence. Get them out of public schools now. Thank you.
Thank you. Margot Dahlstein and then Gina Williams. Margot? Gina Williams?
Evening, I'm Gina Williams. I have 3 kids in D220 in elementary, middle, and soon-to-be high school. I have just 2 simple questions that I have been asked by several parents in emails. We just haven't received a clear answer to these questions. So number 1, we've asked if D220 is a gender-affirming district, meaning that a child is immediately affirmed by the school in their choice of gender expression, and parents or guardians might not be informed of a child's gender identity at school. I would like a clear answer on this policy from D220. If a child tells an adult at school about their preferred gender that may or may not align with their biological gender, is it district policy to inform and partner with that child's parents? Yes or no, please. Second, Parents and guardians have been requesting transparency on the many surveys given to our minor children during the course of the school year. While parents are informed surveys are coming and given a choice to opt out, we would like to know what questions are on these surveys. Will D220 provide survey content, context, and survey questions to parents and guardians ahead of time, moving forward? Yes or no, please. An uninformed opt-out is not a solution. We would like to know what questions our children are being asked. Thank you.
Becky Riley, and then Anastasia Sinicelli.
Folks, you know me. My name is Becky Riley. I have 2 kids in the district. Hello, Dr. Hunt. Hello, board members. Good to see you. I'm here to talk about the adult content and just make sure there are no kids in the room. Just quick show of hands. Who thinks that the book Gender Queer is appropriate for high school age kids? Anyone in high school, who thinks it's appropriate for that? Anyone in the room? No? Okay. I think we covered that. I think most everyone here tonight is here for the same purpose, to protect our kids. I think that's why we have to address the porn issue in our schools. I'm holding up a graphic display. I'm holding up a picture of something that's in our schools. It's porn. The content. Would you want your kids to see this? And I'm just asking you as board members, any of you at home, would you share this with your children at home, no matter what age, all the way from pre-K up to high school? It's not appropriate, right? No one wants to look at it. It's embarrassing, right? No, of course not. It's not appropriate. If you saw your kids viewing this on social media, if you saw them viewing this at home, what would you do? We're talking about porn, right? Porn that is on the shelf in our high school, it's in our library, it's accessible to students without restrictions or parental consent. This particular book of porn, titled Gender Queer, is illustrated here, has graphic pictorials of boys performing oral sex on each other, has a pictorial image of a $10 bullet vibrator and a kid with vaginal slime on his finger. Not to mention a pic of 2 boys having intercourse. Are you embarrassed? I am. You should be. Are you shamed? You should be. Anyone that allows this should be. Are you angry? I am. I was banned on Facebook for posting these pictures because these pictures, this porn, violates even Facebook's community standards. Yet it's on the shelf in our high school. These pictures are in the book Gender Queer. Now think about this. I would be arrested for pedophilia if I shared this with anyone on the street. Taxpayers are entitled to know the criteria, names of creators of criteria, and the names of teachers and admin who choose controversial, obscene material. Concealment facilitates unethical behavior among teachers and breeds distrust among taxpayers. Transparency fosters trust and accountability. Government school teachers who are paid by the public want absolute autonomy and absolute anonymity, and that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we have adults introducing obscene materials and others to your children.
Thanks, Becky.
What becomes increasingly clear is that schools, not unlike District 220, are using your money, your taxpayers' money, to subsidize curricula and activities that undermine many taxpayers' deepest beliefs and morals.
Anastasia? And then Karen Collins after Anastasia.
Hi, I'm Anastasia. I have 2 children in the district, ages 8 and 10. I'm here again to express my concerns about the inappropriate material and indoctrination in our district. I have mentioned this before in person. I've also emailed. I've been in discussions with a lot of the other parents, both in person and in our private groups. There have been a couple incidents of indoctrination from the DEI level at the 4th grade, which I know you guys are aware of. Ms. Alvarez at Roslyn Road, who decided to do a read aloud. And the reason I bring this up is not just because I disagree with it, it's because the process is broken. I appreciate you guys bringing it up and all of the reasons why there is a process, but the process is broken completely. And it needs to either change, but I also believe you have the ability and the power to get these books off the shelf and also change the process. Many of us have FOIA'd the curriculum for different teachers, different grades, and these read-aloud books are not part of the curriculum. So these teachers have autonomy, and there are different teachers in various schools who, in our opinion, are activists, and it's not acceptable. So we obviously have a list of those people who we agree and disagree with, and a lot of that falls under racism, and I know that your DEI has mentioned Ibram Kendi, seems to be an idol of his, yet he's an activist and a racist himself. So those books don't belong in our schools either. They glorify criminals and drug addicts. So on the topic of the sexually explicit books in our middle schools and high schools, if you do a simple search in our online library catalog, you will find 25 books, multiple pages worth. So that's hundreds of books on the topic of gender transitioning and sex. If you do a search on vapes, you get 3 books. 3. And all 3 of those books talk about the dangers of vaping. How many books do you think out of those hundreds on gender change talk about the dangers of it? How many? None. We are upwards in the 95th percentile of children up to age 18 who regret gender reassignment surgery and puberty blockers. But there is no danger book about gender in the library. That's a serious problem. So tell me what you think about that. I know I'm running out of time, but on August 1st, ISB, I guess, is coming out with guidelines on SB 818, and it just seems like this is a cop-out, and coincidentally, it's right before school starts, right? Well, you guys have a choice, and you have to say no to 818. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen? After Karen is Rosanna.
Hi, my name's Karen Klawans, and I have a recent graduate from Barrington High School. I have emailed all of you multiple and many times over the past 2 years, and I'm usually not a public speaker, as this is my first time coming before and speaking tonight on a subject I feel so passionate about many. So my question to all of you this evening is, where do you stand? I hope you stand with what is best for children. That is why many of you have run to become school board members. As a parent, it is our duty to defend and protect our children. I recently went through the district's book review process, which is not really a process. I was the first process that I went through with the administrator who guided me through it. He had never been through the book process himself, as he stated to me in emails. I have emailed your board last November. 5 months later, I've received 2 replies from 2 of you. That is extremely disappointing. And what does that tell us as community members? I'm not really sure why my questions haven't been answered, so I'm here tonight to seek some answers. And I hope somebody will give me some written response, as I have requested many times. What is the district's policy and procedures that are in place for parents to restrict access to questionable material? Are there forms, opt-out procedures, request letters? What's in place and where can we find them? Has the board approved any new sexual education standards by the state or national? When will the public be informed on these decisions? Hopefully not the week of school. I understand that all schools are required to teach sex ed. However, the most recent amendments allow for each individual school district to determine whether to teach these topics or not. Where does District 220 stand? Are you going to adopt these recent amendments? The sexualization of school curriculum is not welcomed here. If some of the materials, as stated before, I showed somebody outside in the public, I would be arrested and brought up on charges. Once a child is exposed to sexual content, there is no going backwards. Their brain development is not capable of handling and processing sexual content. So I ask you again, where do you stand? And I will put all of my questions in another email to follow up from tonight, which I hope to get a written response from. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosanna? And then Ben?
Hi, my name is Rosanna Klusmeyer. I have 2 children in the district, aged 9 and 11. My husband and I moved here from the city 9 years ago in hope of finding good quality education. I feel like I'm living in the twilight zone. I do not know what is going on. Having moved here from the UK and speaking to my family back home, they are shocked. And do you know what they say? Only in America. Schools and school libraries need to be safe environments for students. You have moral and legal obligations to protect our children from this type of exposure. This is not about inclusivity. It's not about gay, straight, any of that. This is porn, no question about it. No one can argue this. And it doesn't just stop here in the school libraries. My biggest concern is we need to know that teachers are not exposing our children to these beliefs in the classroom during read alouds. Sexual orientations, political views should not be shared by teachers. Knowing that certain teachers in our district have gone off curriculum to share their feelings and personal beliefs is wrong, and those teachers need to be reprimanded and called out. This needs to never happen again. A process needs to be established, and it needs to be across all schools in our district. As many have said, research shows that a child or teen's exposure to pornography cannot be reversed. Once it's seen, it can never be unseen. Or ever undo the effects or damage caused. This needs to be fixed immediately. There's absolutely no excuse for these types of book recommendations in our schools. Schools need to stop focusing on social issue and group identity achievement. This is where this is coming from, and refocus on what is important, what our schools are intended for, student learning and individual achievement, period. Parents, don't just think this will not affect your child because you know them. This will affect your child just because this will change society as we know it. It doesn't just stop with our children. Thank you.
Ben and then Christy Johnson.
Good evening, Ben Klusmeyer. I've got 2 kids in the district. Appreciate your all's time. You know, coming out of this, we're 2 years out of COVID, and I'm at a school board talking about pornography. I don't even know what to do with this. It's like Twilight Zone, right? I mean, this is what we're talking about. The community of Barrington that has so much to offer, such a great history, and we're sitting in here talking about pornography. Because that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Should we start serving alcohol? Should we start letting the kids smoke in the bathrooms, in class? Like, come on, guys. We have lost the plot. And, you know, I sit here tonight and I listen to words like adult content. It's more mature. I saw some of the pictures, but I want to understand the full book and the content. Is there really anything else to understand? I mean, there's not, guys. Again, regardless of what side political you sit on, this is pure wrong. This just has to go there. You know, and I appreciate policies and procedures. I'm well versed in those, but you know, it frankly sounds like a cop-out. You know, my girls are my life, as is my wife. For them to be exposed to that, that's my job. That's my job to explain the birds and the bees, not yours. Your job is to get back and educate them. Get our next generation prepared to continue to have America being the best country in the world. Not teaching them about pornography. So, I mean, you guys really got to think about that. But I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate your dedication to the community. All of that is great. This one isn't. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Christy Johnson and then Rachel.
Hi, I am Christy Johnson, first-time talker, long-time listener. I graduated from Barrington High School. My parents met at Barrington High School. I taught at Roslyn Road School. I am a parent of a 22-year-old, 17-year-old, and 14-year-old and live in the North Barrington area. I want to say I appreciate you recognizing parents' requests for some actions before the meeting started on these books that have been highlighted. However, there are more likely and maybe there are more to come. I want to make sure you all understand just because these few books have come to parents' attention and they happen to be LGBTQ focused, by no means does that mean we want them gone for that reason. We want them gone because they're porn, plain and simple. There may be books that represent other communities on the shelves that may also be considered pornography. We just haven't found them yet. I find it crazy that I'm even saying we haven't found them yet. We trust you with our kids and shouldn't have to be questioning if you will protect them or not. We have come off a confusing, upsetting, mentally challenging 2 years that has been hard on all of us, especially our children. Did any of you, when you were young, go into your library at school and have access to see and check out pornographic books on the shelf? I'm the result of the education that many of you moved here for, and I certainly never saw anything like these books. So what has changed? Please immediately come up with a better policy and safety standards on this going forward, because this is your job, nobody else's. Other districts have limited access or removed these books already. I'm also aware that many districts that we align ourselves with have opted out of the SB 818 already. It's time to protect kids' innocence and mental health in our schools, because we all know there are things outside of school that are working to break them down. Our children deserve better than this. Thank you.
Rachel Turk?
Good evening. My name is Rachel Turk, and I've had 2 boys graduate from BHS and a girl going to BHS in the fall as a freshman. Thank you, Dr. Hunt, for explaining the policies. If I understand it correctly, the books in question are not part of NED 220 curriculum. One thing the last speaker just said that caught my attention, that when she said, "This is your job, nobody else's." I take issue with that. The American Library Association has for decades taken the term parental authority very seriously. Parental authority is the right and the responsibility of parents, and only parents, to restrict materials to make sure it's appropriate for their children, and only their children. You may feel very strongly about a book, but your parental authority ends with your children. Your parental authority does not extend to everyone else's kids. Your parental authority does not extend to other adults. Freedom is the choice for people to decide for themselves how best to raise their children. I might agree with some of the points made here this evening, but I want to decide for myself. I do not appreciate other people deciding to ban books on my behalf. It seems like the policy Angela outlined and the review process Dr. Hunt outlined should be sufficient. I know this is a large group here and people are very passionate, but I hope the board endeavors to find a way to both protect our students' First Amendment rights, our parents' First Amendment rights, while also reviewing the material to see if it meets any of the standards for obscene material. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Before we move on, can I just make a request? You know, we talked prior, and Dr. Hunt, so thank you for kind of prefacing everything before we started going to public comment and even into your presentation. And although you put an outline out there, if I could suggest, you know, I think a key thing we need to figure out is what exactly is pornography. I mean, we're talking about going through a process, and the process is fine, but I think that's the key takeaway here. And the process needs to, you know, Rachel's leaving, but, you know, I agree with what she's saying as far as put this in the hands of the parents. So if a parent wants to have their child exposed to this, that's fine. I mean, nobody's suggesting banning, but if a parent doesn't want their child subjected to it, and I myself don't want my child subjected to any of this, ever, actually, until she's an adult. I guess my ask of you would be, can we somehow find a way to allow for parental consent? And I know you said that that's something that we want to look at after this process or this evaluation is done. Can we do it concurrently and figure out, gosh, is there a way we can, you know, have a list and I know it's a big ask, but something's got to be done here. I know if this was available, I would be on this list. Because these two books and any other book that has any sexual content at all, whether it's homosexual, heterosexual, other, doesn't matter to me. I don't want my daughter subjected to this before she's 18 years old. That's just plain and simple. And I guess to that, is that something we can commit to doing?
I think I responded earlier saying it's something certainly we can consider. I just want the time to think through the implications and the operational nature of that as well. So concurrent, sure, I can have those conversations. I need to work through what are the implications of that decision for the school district, the school board, and, from an operational sense.
Okay, and that's fair. And then just to get this off our shelves for now, at least, I don't know what the process is, but this book is gay. Can I, myself, ask that this book be reviewed? I know there's a review for gender queer, but can we do a review on this book is gay? I don't know what people...
You're a parent in the district, Steve, so you can fill out the form and...
Okay, so there's a form to fill out.
Yep.
I'm happy to fill that out, just to get it off the shelves so that administrators can look at it and our parents can take some time to process it.
You said you don't want to ban books, so...
I don't want to ban books.
So be careful of what you're saying then. You just said you want it off the shelf. Isn't that banning
for the time
books?
being, so that parents can at least have a chance to respond to this, because these are things that, you talk about the community showing up. The community showed up today.
Absolutely.
And can I just say that there are thousands of books in this world that are not in our school district for a reason. That does not mean they're banned. That means they're inappropriate for children.
Thank you.
So not
This is a very slippery slope.
I don't need you to lecture me on that. I know it's a Barry, you would have your 10-year-old read that book.
That's not what I'm saying.
You're a hero.
We have to be careful.
I agree with you that we have to be
and
careful.
find many books that people are going to object to. That's all I'm saying.
Dr. Hunt said that we would have this on a future agenda, right? Board? The board is talking, please.
What I said was that we will go through that process, the board will get the information, the recommendation from that committee, and if we want to bring it forward to an agenda, we would do that.
Okay.
So just to be clear, Dr. Hunt, the only book currently under review is Gender Queer. Are there any other books that committee is reviewing right now?
Well, Lawn Boy was reviewed 3 months ago.
Lawn Boy?
4 months ago.
Removed. I received notification.
It was reviewed. It was reviewed.
Right,
It
you
was reviewed.
denied it, and it's not acceptable. You denied it, and you
Okay.
can't re-review it for 1 year. The process is broken.
So out of curiosity, if a book
We need
was
to continue
reviewed,
the business of
if
the
that book
board.
was reviewed, why was it not brought to the board?
It was sent
It
to the
was.
board.
It was sent to the board.
When we were on here?
Yes.
And when?
It was
I will,
in-
can you
I
please
don't have
follow
the
up
date.
and just
Yeah,
give it to
I'll
us again
resend
this
you
week?
what was put in the report.
Okay, not in a public.
Dr. Hunt, is there a time frame in which we can review it again? Because I asked you this question. You sent it to me on February 10th, or it was in the February 10th mailer.
Yep.
Can I suggest that we put on our agenda to discuss in July then?
I think the policy says 1 year.
So then we're putting that 1 year.
I'll have to look at that. Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess I can make this request when we talk about the next agenda, but I personally would like it on the agenda for the next meeting.
And I guess I would like
Wait.
clarification.
Hold on. You're not going to review this book by next agenda.
I beg your pardon?
That book will not go through that process by the next meeting.
It's already been through the process, hasn't it?
The
Lawn Boy.
Which book are you talking about?
The Lawn Boy.
The Lawn Boy has already been through committee.
Right. And the board has a year to.
No.
But we don't. So when you sent us that notice in February, that was our only chance to discuss it as a board?
To bring it to a board agenda, yes.
And that's not what I was informed. I was informed that the board votes
The board is talking.
Yeah, I guess I would like more clarification on how this works. I would assume that any book that was brought under review would be presented to the board and voted on, whether or not, no matter what the advisement was. So,
An email saying that was the process, and that's not what
I
happened.
will share with you the process.
Thank you.
This week.
We'll share it with the public. We need a process.
Right.
I think,
I'm gonna
can we
go
also
back to-
clarify, sorry, really fast, that the fifth grade health curriculum is going to be on, we are going to be discussing that further on a future agenda, so don't think that we're ignoring you on that also, please.
Are we still able to talk?
That is.
Public comment is closed. We've got board business to finish. So I'm going to go try to get back to our agenda. Informational reports. Does anybody have any questions?
He wasn't called.
He wasn't called.
His name was on the list.
I called every name on the list.
My name should have been on Andy Spencer's.
Can you please verify there's no Andy on here?
There's not.
There's not. No, we've already closed public comment. So informational reports. Any comments?
Sandra, can I request that we just let Andy speak? He's here. He's making a request.
Yes. Would like to reopen public comment.
I'd like to reopen it.
Two.
That's fine, he can talk.
Okay.
We'll talk.
3 minutes, Andy. What is your last name, Andy?
Spencer's. I went to Grove Station in Barrington, and I've never seen this since I went to Barrington High School. Grew up my whole life here, and I'm really confused like everybody else. We voted you to be up here, correct? We voted you for one reason, and that's to protect our kids, to work for us, not for the government, for us. We voted you to help us get our kids where they need to be, and we're talking about porn in these books, and I'm so confused. If you look at what it says on one of these books, I can't wait to have your cock in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life. This is gender queer. If my kids read this, they're going to have anxiety. My kid already suffers from anxiety. It's hard enough for him to concentrate in school and to worry about to be good in school. We got to worry about math, reading, science, history. This is lacking. We had COVID for 2 years. We fought about taking the masks off. There's still COVID, and we only have one person wearing a mask. And there's other people here that fought for masks, and they're not wearing it. COVID's still around. There's always an argument. It's always going against the parents. It's only about the parents and the kids. That's it.
Yes.
Let's not worry about the government. If you stand up, you'll be a better person. I know there's pressure from up there. We know. I mean, if you go around to all schools, they push for the kids. Like Zurich won their battle with this situation, I believe, I was told. I've been to several meetings. Gary Rabine is a friend of mine, and he's pushing for us. And he's an important candidate here to be our next governor. And I hope everybody's listening on YouTube or wherever we're doing this to help vote for Gary Rabine to help us, because he's going to make a difference here. We come here every single time, and I've been sitting and keeping my mouth shut every meeting for the last 2 years. And what I watch is when we speak, I see some of you smirking, rolling your eyes, and it drives me nuts. Because if I speak up, and it'll get ugly, and I'll be kicked out of here. Because I can't stand disrespect. We value your hard work. I've been here my whole life. And I remember 6th grade or 5th grade, I had sex ed. It was simple. It was a man and a female. That's how you produce babies. I don't care if students are gay, transgender, that's their choice. I have no problem with that. I have friends that are gay. It's fine. But we're not going to teach our kids to say that's okay and confuse them. They're already confused in life. It's just super simple. It's like 2 + 2. Man and woman produces kids. We don't need to teach my kid how to hold his penis, or it's okay with another man or 2 women. It's everybody's laughing because it's disgusting. I wasn't raised like that. I have good beliefs. I work hard. I pay my taxes to get a good school, District 220.
Thank you.
That's why we're here.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to go to board committee reports. Do we have any board committee reports?